Snatch. Here's my word of caution on the snatch. Nobody should be snatching until their swings and cleans have been dialed in for like probably a couple months. And then even on top of that, you want to make sure you're doing all the other overhead work before you really start getting in the snatch. So we're just going to practice this a little bit because honestly, today we're just going to clean up a couple things and it's either there or it's not. You want your snatch practice to be short. If you're practicing your snatch technique for more than like 5 minutes, you're probably just going to end up with either bruised arm or missing skin. So you got that to look forward to. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the snatch from the top down. So what I might recommend is that you clean your bell up any way you choose. Use 2 hands or clean it like so. And press it up overhead, okay? So let's start here. Let's see your overhead position.
Is that fine to where you're at?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Everybody's overhead position looks pretty good. What happens if you open your fingers? Do you feel like it's secure? Good. Bring it down. Let's try the same thing with the other side. Feel secure? Feel secure? Pretty good. And down. All right. So, again, same thing when you're at the top. If I haven't made this abundantly clear, you want the handle deep into the heel of your hand, like so. Most of you guys look like you had that position down pretty good. You know, this is one of the reasons why kettlebells are so interesting. The weight, the center of the weight is behind your arm. It's actually behind and below your hands. Even though you're supporting it, obviously, with the hand here, the weight is actually down and behind. This creates a very unique and interesting training effect when you're doing presses, when you're doing snatches, cleans, anytime the bell's in this rack position. It's kind of hard to describe, but essentially you really want to be thinking about where is that center of the bell going. A lot of times we can get so wrapped up in like the handle and the hand and you know, trying to over grip it and all this other stuff. And the really interesting thing is that at the end of the day, you're really moving the center of that mass behind and below your hand. So you don't really have the control over it like you do a dumbbell or a barbell. Does that make sense? This is one of the reasons why I like the snatches and the cleans with a kettlebell is just a little bit different than a barbell. So again, when you guys are overhead like so, the reason I had you open your hand is because if you're relying on your grip, that's not good. You don't have to open your hand at the top of a snatch, but it's a good way to kind of just check and see like where you're balanced. As you were coming down, that bell rotated on you. That happens. That happens. What you also have to consider is where the center of the mass on that bell is resting on the back of your arm. And honestly, I could pontificate and talk about that all day, but it's something that you got to feel. It's got to be aligned, and it's going to look different for every person and with every bell. The different sizes of the bells, the different styles, you're all going to have a slightly different position of where it's resting and the angle on the back of your arm. All I can offer is just don't be afraid to take your free hand and just scooch around. Just scooch around. To the point where if my hand is open, it should be secure here. It should be secure here, 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 and here. If suddenly you get to this one angle and the sucker takes you to an arm bar, just adjust accordingly. And that's why a snatch can pull you out of alignment just like that. Just like that. That's why everything has to be aligned just so. I'm sorry. The snatch negative. One more time. See how I still do that same open hand, catch with the finger idea? Catch it into the backswing, set it down. Let's try 3 to 5 per side. This drill is to practice the descent. So if you're doing the opposite, maybe in the context of an actual class, somebody who's still working on their technique, you can, I'm not gonna do that one. You can snatch up and then bring it down into the rack. Make sense? But that drill comes after the drop. Because again, we're working on the eccentric first. Because if you can get the eccentric, the concentric's gonna be 80% taken care of. Everybody trains at the opposite. Same principle with the clean. Notice how close I keep the weight to my body. I'm not letting it go out. If I was wearing a hat, I'd be thinking about taking my hat off. So that's why we do the eccentric first. We do the eccentric first because the pattern is the same. The pattern is the same on the way down as it is on the way up. The trajectory, I should say. So that's why we do the eccentric first, so that we can practice the full range of motion without the bang. That's why we do that with the clean as well, so we can practice the pattern without the impact. So if you have somebody who has a picture-perfect eccentric, they keep it close, they're still probably going to knock their arm a couple of times when they go back up. But the learning curve will be way shorter. Way, way, way shorter. So that's number one. Practice more of the eccentric. If you're doing it in the context of a workout, eccentric down, clean and press up. Or clean and push press. But again, if you can't press the weight, probably shouldn't be snatching it. The other thing that I would suggest is to sometimes you can just have people stop here at like what's kind of called like a high pull position. Again, it's not a barbell high pull, which was called something else, but that's where you could just literally do the snatch without the lockout. I don't like doing that too much because it's a little too reminiscent of this, like sloppy swings. But if you can get somebody who stays in their lats and can be kind of relaxed up here, that's it. So it's weightless. Another thing is, go back to the one-hand swing. If you got somebody who's got a great one-hand swing with a 32, They got the hips that can move a 32. They've got the hips that'll snatch a 16. It's kind of, there's kind of that progression there. That's why I like the fact that kettlebells only come in certain sizes, because I kind of know, okay, if you can two-hand swing this, you can one-hand swing that. If you can one-hand swing that, I know you can clean this. If you can press that, I'm comfortable with you snatching XYZ. And the more you have an eye for this stuff, the more you can kind of put those pieces together. And that's what the level method basically has built into it. If this, then that. So, yeah, it's a matter of trusting yourself, keeping it close. Some impact will happen, but if you've done your due diligence and you've had somebody practice holding this overhead position for long periods of time, you guys do like overhead walks. If you say, hey, move your kettlebell around. Make sure it's in exactly the right spot where you want it. All right, coach. Make sure that that's how it looks. Make sure you can keep your hands open. That's another good kind of like rule of thumb, is if somebody can like walk around for 30 seconds, like so, or do a Turkish get-up with a weight, then, within the get-up, they end in this position. You start lying down, you end up like so. If you trust that somebody can handle a weight like this, that's got to be a prerequisite to actually snatching it. And then just loads of practice. That's why really I only recommend that you practice in little chunks at a time. 5 minutes. Coach, it feels great. Awesome. Stop. Coach, I don't know, it's bruising my arm. Stop. Like, you want high frequency, short duration practice, especially for the snatch. All that makes sense?
Honestly, I've heard a tip. I like holding it out here like this.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like almost just thinking about like twisting it around versus like up and over. Is that a fine thing to kind of spread it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only tricky thing is that will work when you have the right combination of anatomy and kettlebell.
Okay.
Some kettlebell handles are like that thing. The corner of that kettlebell and the corner of that kettlebell are fundamentally different.
Okay.
And that's a fine way to train it. And actually, like when I'm doing you guys are familiar with the 5-minute snatch test. Well, you got it on the board, right? That's something we gotta do for Strong First. I will, just to switch up the wear pattern on my hands, I'll snatch on pinky side, then I'll snatch on thumb side, then I'll snatch in the middle, and I'll kind of go back and forth. And once you get really tight on all this stuff, like, you'll actually spare some fatigue of your muscles doing it that way. It's very subtle. But once you get like really good at it and you're doing you're doing a bunch of reps, those little adjustments there can help. But in general, I like that. That's fine. That's cool. As long as that overhead pattern is rock steady. But in general, I also like to be able to see that the student can snatch with the hand directly in the middle. Because when you go to one side and the other, it changes that angle. And they just have to know, you have to know how that angle affects the lockout. But yeah, that's totally cool. This is the one thing